Hey friends, what up? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Lamed, Daf 30 of Masechta Sukkah. Daf Lamed is awesome. It's the first Daf of the third parak of Masechta Sukkah, 3 out of 5. Lulav hagazool, that's the new parak, and that's really the topic of today's Daf, is talking about a stolen Lulav. Can you use a stolen Lulav? That's really, some interesting sugyas. Let's just maybe jump in, and that's really the subject of today's daf, is the concept of using a stolen lulav on Sukkah, and it's really quite interesting. So on Sukkahs, and it's quite interesting. So let's get started. We're going to get started on Chav Tesamud Beis at the beginning of the new parak. Lulav hagazool v'hayavish pasul. The famous parak of Lulav hagazool. In this parak, we're going to talk about the halachis of the daled minim, of the lulav, the hadasim, the aravos, the esrig. That happens in this parak, which is very gishmak. So we start by saying that a stolen lulav or a dried out lulav, pasul. Can't use it. Shalasher v'shelo nidachas, pasul. If the lulav comes from a palm tree that was worshipped for avodah zarah, or a palm tree that was inside of an ira nidachas, who can tell me what an ira nidachas is? It's a city that the majority of the cities were the majority of the inhabitants were worshipping avodah zarah, so you have to kill all the people by the sword and burn everything in there. So if it belongs to Nir Nidachas, so if it was a palm tree of Nir Nidachas, you can't use its lulav for it's palm shoot thingies that for a lulav. The Gemara in Sanhedrin Lamaisa says that there never was a Nir Nidachas, but then the Gemara there I think also says that there was a Nir Nidachas. So go figure. Niktam Rosho, if the top of the lulav is clipped off. Nifritu olav, if the leaves of the lulav were kind of fell off. Pasul. Nifritu olav, kosher. But if the leaves, I don't know how to say it, the leaves, like the lulav has like all like those, not really leaves, but like layers. So if they're kind of like spread out, meaning they didn't fall off, they're still attached, but they're kind of open, spread out, kosher. Rabbi Yehuda says, but if they're spread out, you should at least tie them so that they're kind of flush. Okay? Sinihar barzel ksheris, lulavs from Iron Mountain. Sounds very fun. Kosher. Okay, what's interesting about these Iron Mountain lulavs is that apparently their leaves are like kind of short. They like don't quite layer on top of one another. But that seems to be acceptable nonetheless. Lulav sheyeshbo shlosha tvachim kidei lenaneh bo kosher. A lulav that has 3 tvachim in order to shake it is kosher. The Gemara is going to explain that it's really 3 tvachim and enough to shake it, meaning 4 tvachim, essentially. So meaning lulav has to have essentially it's going to be 4 tvachim of height so that you can shake it. All right. Frek the Gemara kapasuk v'tani. Loshna b'yom tev rishon v'loshna b'yom tev sheni. Gewaldig. So the Gemara says, look, the Mishnah says, Lulav hagazool v'hayavish pasul. A lulav that is stolen, a lulav that is dried out, pasul. No differentiation is made, no distinction is made. Are we talking about the first day of Sukkot? Are we talking about days 2 through 7? What are we talking about over here? Seems to be no distinction. If it's stolen or dried out, it's pasul. Bishlama yavish hadabin v'leko. The Gemara says, I understand a dried out lulav. You can't use it at all. Because if it's dried out, it's not hadar. It's not beautiful. And the pasuk says, Ekeli v'ambeyu. This is my God and I will glorify him. And we've seen a few times, I think, hisnoi lefonav b'mitzvahs, that when we do mitzvahs, we should do them in a beautiful way. So therefore, I understand. You need the lulav to be beautiful, and if it's dried out, it's not beautiful. You can't use it at all on Sukkot if it's dried out, days 1 through 7 at all. Hagazool, but listen to this, friends. And it's going to be explained a little bit better when it comes to gazul. Bishlomo yom tev rishon dichsiv lochem mishalochem aval el b'yom tev sheni amaylo. Oh, this is so geschmack, friends. if you notice in the pasuk, what does the pasuk say? L'kachtem lachem bayom harishon pri'et tzadar v'kapos tamarim, etc. The pasuk only says that you'll take a lulav on the first day. Meaning Sukkah is a 7-day festival. You sit in the Sukkah for 7 days, you eat in the Sukkah, you sleep in the Sukkah. And then on the first day, there's this lulav thing. On the first day, there's a special mitzvah that on the first day, you take a lulav, adasim, aravos, esrig, you hold them together, you shake them. That's it. That on the first day of the 7-day festival, you take a lulav. And therefore it says, it has to belong to you, and it can't be stolen. Now, on days 2 through 7, we say, Midr Abanon, Zeicher Lemikdash, as we're going to learn. We also take the lulav on days 2 through 7 as well. But that's Midr Abanon. So therefore the Gemara wants to say, look, the mitzvah of lulav is really on the first day of Sukkot. It says, L'kachtem lachem b'yom harishon. On days 2 through 7, we only take the lulav midar abanon. So now I understand why hadar, zakeli vanveyu, that if I have to do a mitzvah, whether it's midaraisa or whether it's midar abanon, we still want it to be beautiful, and therefore yavesh is going to be possible for all 7 days. Because whether it's midaraisa or whether it's midar abanon, we have to do this mitzvah in a beautiful way, and therefore a lulav that's dried out is going to be possible. But in terms of a stolen lulav, why should, okay, fine. So I understand the first day. It says, L'kachtem lochem. It has to be yours, it can't be stolen. But on days 2 through 7, where it doesn't say L'kachtem lochem, we only do the mitzvah midar abanon anyways, meaning we're only doing the mitzvah not because it says L'kachtem lochem b'yom rishon, but because it's midar abanon. The rabbi said that we want you to do it days 2 through 7 zeicher lemikdash. So why should I assume that I can't use a stolen lulav? So Ooh, wow. You hear that? So Rabbi Yochanan says in the name of Shimon ben Yochai, you know why in days 2 through 7 you can't use a stolen lulav? Even though it doesn't say lachem, right? L'kachtem lachem b'yom harishon is b'yom harishon, on the first day. So it doesn't say lachem on days 2 through 7. You know why you can't use a stolen lulav on days 2 through 7? Because that would be a mitzvah that came about through an aveira. Wow! That on days 2 through 7 you'll be doing a mitzvah only on account of the fact that you did an aveira in order to do it. You stole this lulav. You violated the aveira of stealing. Lo sigzol, one of the 10 commandments. So, lo signov. Which is taka, kidnapping. Wait, so is lo sigzol one of the things? Maybe not. Uncle Pony, don't steal anyways. So you stole. And you can only do this mitzvah because you stole. So that's a problem. It's a mitzvah abba b'avera. And in general, when it comes to mitzvahs, mitzvah abba b'avera is a problem. If you have to, do an avera in order to do a mitzvah, that's no good. And therefore, if you're stealing this lulav, you can't use it for a mitzvah, and that's a global thing by mitzvahs. Wow. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, "Vavesim hagazool v'sapisech v'sachole." That the pasuk says in Malachi, I have like a quasi cousin, not really a cousin, but a quasi cousin, who his name is Malachi, lives in Eretz Yisrael, and so it says in Malachi that the Eibishter says to the people, he says, look, if you were to bring for me a stolen offering or a lame offering or a sick offering, Hashem says the pasuk, you think I would like that? No way, right? So God's saying, I don't want your stolen offerings, I don't want your lame offerings, I don't want your sick offerings. So we see that hagazool dumya d'pisech, says the Gemara, that in that pasuk we're juxtaposing stolen and lame offerings. Just like a lame animal, an animal that has a mum, you're never going to be able to offer it. It has a proper mum, it has a blemish. It's never going to get healed. It's like a real permanent blemish. It's never, just like that permanent blemish is never going to get healed, and therefore you're never going to be able to offer that animal as a korban. So the same thing applies to an animal that is stolen. If the animal is stolen, it will never be acceptable as a korban loshna, lifnei yeush, loshna lachar yeush. It doesn't matter if the original owner gave up hope of ever getting it back, that there's that potentially if somebody steals something and then the original owner gave up hope, what's called yeush, the original owner gave up hope of ever getting it back, it's possible that maybe it would belong to the person who would be kona it now. But we say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the original owner gave up hope or not. You cannot use this animal that was stolen. You cannot offer it as a korban. Right? Loshna lifnei yeush, loshna lachar yeush. Doesn't matter if the owner has not yet given up hope, in which case he still owns it, or even after he gave up hope, which therefore maybe the thief now owns the animal. You cannot offer it ever as a korban. Bishlama lifnei yeush. So the Gemara says, I understand why you should be unable to offer this korban prior to yeush, prior to the original owner giving up hope, because Adam kiyakrav mikem rachmanav v'lavdidehu. Because prior to the original owner giving up hope, so it still belongs to the original owner. So I understand why the thief would be unable to offer a stolen korban pre-yeush, because it doesn't belong to him. And the pasuk says, Adam kiyakrav mikem. You have to offer it from yourselves. You have to own it. And before yeush, you don't own it. So I understand why you would be unable to offer a stolen animal pre-yeush. But once the original owner gives up hope of ever getting back this animal, right? Meaning Reuven steals an animal from Shimon, and Shimon says, it's gone. I'm never getting it back. So at that point, it was what's called yeush, and potentially it now belongs to Reuven. So why should Reuven not be allowed to offer this korban? Because it's a mitzvah that came about through an avera. Even though Reuven technically owns the animal now because Shimon gave up hope, but still, he only owns it because it's only his because he first stole it and then Shimon gave up hope, but it only came about through theft. And therefore, we don't want to do any mitzvahs that come about through theft. So there you see that any mitzvah that comes about through theft is not acceptable. And therefore, stealing a lulav, you would be unable to use that lulav on all 7 days. On the first day, it says, it has to be yours on the first day. And days 2 through 7, it would be a mitzvah ba'aver. Wow. From Rabbi Yochanan ben Yochai, it says Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. What does the pasuk mean? That I am God who loves justice, and who hates theft in korbanis. Right? God says, look, any animal that was stolen, I'm not interested in it. Even though all the animals belong to me. At the end of the day, it's all mine anyways. It doesn't matter if it's Reuven's or Shimon's, it's all mine anyways. Still, says God, I'm not interested in any stolen animals. Moshel melech basar adam, it's a parable to a king, that he was passing by a toll booth. So he instructed to his servants, he says, okay, servants, pay the toll collector. They said to him, why? You're basically just paying yourself. All of the tolls just go to you anyways. Why are you paying the toll? Just go right through. And he says to them, because I'm going to set the example. Because even though, yes, all the tolls go to me anyways, but I want that people should see that I also pay the toll. And then they will follow my example and pay the toll as well. The Eibishter also says, look, I am God. I hate theft when it comes to offerings. That my children should learn from me and they won't steal, right? So God says, look, even though, yes, technically all the animals belong to me, and whether it belongs to Reuven, whether it belongs to Shimon, at the end of the day it belongs to me anyways. But still, I have no interest in accepting any korban that comes about through theft, and therefore I want to set the example and make it clear that theft is not acceptable and that the Yidden shouldn't be stealing. Okay. It Marnami was also stated, Amr Ba'ami says, Ba'ami Yavish Pasul, Mipnesha Ein Hadar, that a lulav that is dried out is not okay because it is, right? A lulav that's dried out is pasul because it is not hadar. It's not beautiful. Gazul pasul mishum da'aveh mitzvah ba'avera, and a stolen lulav is pasul on account of mitzvah ba'avera. Ufiligid Rabbi Yitzchak, and this argues on Rabbi Yitzchak, to Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani Amar Shmuel, Loshana b'liyom tov rishon. That this argues on Rabbi Yitzchak, because Rabbi Yitzchak bar Nachmani says the name of Shmuel, that when we say that a stolen lulav is pasul, that's only on the first day. Because the first day it says, L'kachtem lochem, by Yom HaRishon, that has to be yours on the first day. Havav Yom Tov Sheni, but days 2 through 7, then mitoch sheyotze b'shol yotzenami begazul. On Yom Tov Sheni, ki'idu on days 2 through 7, you can use a borrowed lulav, and guess what? While we might not encourage it, you can also use a stolen lulav, right? So we just said until now that on days 2 through 7 you cannot use a stolen lulav because of mitzvah habah b'averos. Says Rabbi Yitzchak, actually on days 2 through 7 you can use a stolen lulav, just like you can use a borrowed lulav. You could technically also use a lulav that you stole. Master of Nachum bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachum bar Yitzchak says, wait a second, how could it be that you can use a stolen lulav on days 2 through 7? Lulav hagazool v'yavish pasul. Our Mishnah says that a lulav that is dried out or stolen is pasul. Hashal kosher, implying that a borrowed lulav, however, is kosher, right? We're saying that a stolen or dried out lulav is pasul. What about a borrowed lulav? I don't know. It sounds like it's kosher. Emas. Now, when would a borrowed lulav be kosher? Clearly, we're not talking about the first day of Sukkot, because on the first day of Sukkot it says, it has to be yours. It can't be borrowed on the first day. It's not his. Rather, if we're saying that a sha'ul, that a borrowed lulav is kosher, we must be talking about days 2 through 7. And we're saying that gazul, lulav hagazool v'yavish pasul. So wouldn't that be clear that on days 2 through 7, a stolen lulav is pasul? How could Rabbi Yitzchak say that a stolen lulav is kosher? Amar Rava, says Rava, the olam b'yom tov rishon. Says Rava, no, really, no, the Mishnah is talking about the first day of Yom Tov. And the Mishnah is not saying that a borrowed lulav is kosher. No, it's talking about the first day of Yom Tov. We're saying that a stolen lulav is pasul. And guess what? A borrowed lulav would also be pasul. It's a lo mibaya. It's not, certainly not this, but even that. Lo mibaya sha'ul d'lav dideyu. Obviously, a borrowed lulav would be unacceptable on the first day of Sukkot because it's not his. Aval gazul, but a stolen lulav, but a stolen lulav, I might think to say, oh, but if it's stolen, so then maybe the original owner gave up hope. After all, he sees a guy is willing to just come up to him and steal his lulav. He immediately gives up hope. This bandit is never gonna give it back. I don't have any hope of getting it back, and therefore, since I might think there's Yerush Bailim, maybe now this thief belongs to him and he should be able to use it. Kamash Mila, no, you can't use a stolen lulav. And Rava says, look, you can argue that it is talking about the first day of Yom Tov, but days 2 through 7, maybe maybe a stolen lulav would be acceptable. Like Rabbi Yitzchak is saying that just like you can use a borrowed lulav, you can also use a stolen lulav. So now Rav Huna, he says to these avankre, who are these avankre? The avankre were like hadas retailers. Jewish hadas retailers, they would sell the hadassim to the people. Now the retailers, of course, would purchase the hadassim from wholesalers. Now the wholesalers were not Jewish, and apparently they had a reputation of stealing the land that they would be selling the hadassim from. And sometimes the land would be stolen from Jews, which means that it becomes a little bit iffy if you have the Jewish retailers buying the hadasim from the Gentile wholesalers who may have stolen the hadas fields from Jewish people. What about, if that's the case, then maybe the Jewish retailers are stealing technically the hadasim from the original Jewish owners. Let's see. So Amlu Rav Huna lanu avankre. So Rav Huna says to these Jewish hadas retailers, Kizavnisu asame akum, when you purchase your hadasim from the Gentile wholesalers, lo sigzizu atun, so don't be the one to remove the hadas from the tree. Ella, ligzazu inu v'yayvulichu. Rather, says Rav Huna, let the Gentile wholesaler cut the hadasim from the tree, and they will give it to you. And so, my time, how come? Because because a regular, apparently at least at that time, a Gentile would they steal land, or at least they were suspected of that. And therefore we have to be concerned that maybe the wholesaler stole the land from a Yid. The karka edin exelis. And says the Gemara, you can't steal land technically, right? We spoke about earlier about maybe if you steal something, if the fellow gives up hope, it becomes yours. That's not the case when it comes to land. Land cannot be stolen. Even if you steal land from somebody else, it doesn't belong to you. It still belongs to the original owner. And therefore, when these wholesalers stole the land from a Yid, even if the Yid gave up hope of ever getting it back, it still, al pi halacha, belongs to him. Hilchach, therefore, ligzazua inu, let the wholesaler remove the hadas from the tree. Ki hechi dilavu yeyush bailim bi'adayu didu. So that the yeyush, the giving up hope, will be in their hands, right? Because once already you separate the hadas from the ground, it's no longer karka, it's no longer land, it's no longer part of the ground. And now it's metaltlin, it's a movable object. Which means that once they remove the hadas from the bush, so then at that point, the fact that the original owner gave up hope of ever getting this field back, that kicks in. So now the wholesaler has this hadas in his hand. The original owner gave up hope of ever getting it back. And then when the wholesaler transfers it to you and gives it to you, we now have yeyush, which took place in the hands of the wholesaler, plus a transfer of the hadasim to you, the retailer. So yeyush plus shini arishus will make it yours, right? So even though it's coming from a land that technically still belongs to the original Yid, but once the wholesaler removes the hadasim from the ground, the yeyush kicks in his hands. He then gives it to you, which is what's called a shinui rishus. He's transferring ownership, I guess. So yeyush plus shinui rishus makes it yours. And like this, you can now sell it to your customers. So if ki gazdu avankre lav yeyush ba'ile bi'adayu v'shinei rishus biyadon. Correct the Gemara, but why do I need the wholesaler to cut the hadas from the tree? Why don't the retailers, the Jewish retailers, they'll cut the hadas from the tree, and the yeyush will kick in their hands, but then they're going to sell it ultimately to the consumer. And then when the retailer sells the hadas to the consumer, so you'll have the yeyush, which happened in the hands of the retailer, and the shinui arishus in the hands of the consumer. So you still have the yeyush plus the shinui arishus, and it'll belong to the consumer. It's no problem of stolen hadasim. Why do I need the wholesaler to clip the hadas from the tree? Which the Gemara says, in a chinami, but the retailer himself is going to need hadasim for sukkahs, for his Hoshaina. A Hoshaina is the Lulav, the hadasim, and the aravis, that bundle together. So the avankri, the retailer is also going to need hadasim for his Hoshaina, and therefore, so what Rav Huna is saying is that, right, the avankri, the retailer, so the wholesaler should clip the hadas from the tree, from the bush, give it to the retailer, and now there was Yeush plus Shinei Rishus, it belongs to the retailer, and the avankri, the retailer, can use the hadas for his own hoshaina. Or, wow, this is Geshmak Sugis. It's like Bava Kama Sugis. So, or Bava Mitzia. I don't know, what is this? I can't remember. I'll go upon him. So, probably a combination of the two. No. But, fact the Gemara, that even if the retailer clips the hadas from the bush himself, and in his possession it becomes the Yeush, but then when he puts it bundles it together with the Lulav and the Aravis, and he ties it together and bundles it together, so that's a Shinui Maise. You're now making it into something new. And by making it into something new, you should be Koneh the Hadas. So even if the retailer himself clips it from the tree, so there's Yeush, plus a Shinui Maise, you're making a change to the Hadas, and that it's now part of this Hoshaina. So shouldn't that work to make it his, and it won't be stolen anymore? Kosav Lulav Ein Tzarech Eged. Which the Gemara says, yeah, but we hold that Lulav, you don't need to bind it together. The Hadasim and the Aravas and the Lulav, you don't have to tie them all together. And therefore, since you don't have to tie them all together, there is no Shinui Maise. And even if you're going to say that you do need to bind together the Lulav and the Hadasim and the Aravas, nonetheless, Shinui Achozah L'Vriyasahu. Still, it's a change, it's not a real change, it's a change that you can easily just undo and revert. And a change that is easily revertible is not a real change. Meaning if you just undo the knot that you tied, it all just goes back and reverts to its original state. So it's not a real Shinui Maise, and it's not going to be enough to be Koneh the Hados. Yeah, but what about the Shinui Hashem? You're changing the name of it. To make our Avale Asa Vashta Hoshaina, that originally was just a Hados, but now, when it's part of this bundle, it's now a Hoshaina. To which the Gemara answers, nah, we always call Hadasim Hoshaina, and therefore there's no real change in the name. And therefore Rav Huna recommends that for the retailers, the wholesaler should cut the hadas from the tree and give it to the retailer, and that way, at least for his own lulav, he'll have the yeush by the wholesaler, and then the shinui rishus when transferred to the retailer, and then he'll be able to use that hadas for his hoshaina, and he doesn't have to worry about stolen hadasim. Chevre, that was daf lamed of Masechta Sukkah. Pretty geshmak, right? Yeah, pretty geshmak. Anyways, so we started the third parak of Masechta Sukkah. We discussed lulav hagazool v'hayavesh pasul, that a stolen or dried out lulav is pasul. So we say, look, first of all, we make a distinction between day 1 and the rest of the days of Sukkot. That really, if we look at the pasuk, it says v'lekachtem lechem bayom harishon pri tzadar, etc. That you really need the mitzvah of lulav is really just the first day. Days 2 through 7, we do lulav midrabanan. Now, we say when it comes to be a lulav that's dried out, it's not beautiful. And all mitzvahs, regardless of if it's midorais or midorabanan, we want to do the mitzvahs in a beautiful way. Therefore, if it's dried out, it's no good all 7 days. However, Frekti Gemara, when it comes to a stolen lulav, technically speaking, it has to be yours on the first day. How do I know that stolen is no good the rest of the days? So it says Rabbi Yochanan, the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, because it's what's called a mitzvah habah ba'avera. It's a mitzvah that comes about through a sin, through an avera. And we don't do mitzvahs habah ba'averas. And therefore, even on days 2 through 7, it would be considered a mitzvah habah ba'avera, which is not acceptable. And that's why you cannot use a stolen lulav. It says Rabbi Yitzchak that actually, on days 2 through 7, just like you can use a borrowed lulav, you can also use a stolen lulav, because lachem only applies to day 1. Very, very interesting. And then, in the spirit of not using a stolen lulav, we had this interesting sort of dialogue, I guess, between Rav Huna and these hadas retailers, that he wanted them to avoid using stolen hadassim. So he recommended to them that the wholesalers who may have stolen the hadas land from Yidden, and therefore technically the hadassim belong to the Yidden, so he recommended to the Jewish retailers that when they buy the hadassim from these Gentile wholesalers, the wholesaler should clip off the hadas from the tree, and by doing so, there will be yeush in their hands, and then when it gets transferred to the retailers, there'll be plus a transfer of ownership with shinui rishus, and yeush plus shinui rishus will certainly make it the property of the retailers, and they will be able to use those hadassim even for themselves, right? Technically, points out the Gemara, if we're talking about the consumers, well, technically then the retailers should be able to clip it from the tree and then transfer it to the consumers when it's sold to them, and technically it would be yeush plus shinui harishus. But we're saying even for the retailers themselves to use for their own hadassim. So if the wholesaler clips it from the tree, it will be yeush by the wholesaler. They'll transfer it to the retailer, and then there will be shinui harishus, and the retailers can even use those hadassim for their own lulav, for their own oshaina. That was daf lamed, daf 30 of Masechta Sukkah. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Peace out.